Well, tomorrow on our program, Michelle Malkin's going to be joining us, plus John Solomon from The Hill, who's broken so many stories about the FBI.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Tomorrow's Wednesday, and Dan and Brian on the radio.
Yep, we'll see you on the radio. And now,
hey, thanks, guys. Good morning, everybody. Fox News Alert now on what is certainly a big morning ahead on the battle for immigration reform. President Trump inviting lawmakers to the White House, and the agenda: can he bridge the gap between parties on border security and protecting the dreamers here in the U.S.? Good morning, everybody. If you stayed up late, you saw an awesome football game. If you didn't, we'll show it to you in a matter of minutes.
You won our little wager, so we'll get to that in a few moments.
Good morning. How you doing,
Good
Sandra?
morning, everybody. Welcome to America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith. Top lawmakers will head to the White House today, already knowing what President Trump's demands are: funding for his border wall and some big changes to our immigration system in exchange for any protections for those so-called dreamers.
And laying out the case, a senior White House advisor, Stephen Miller, saying that any deal must benefit all Americans, but questions whether or not Democrats are willing to negotiate.
Democrats oppose a border wall. They're just saying they want continued, unending illegal immigration. Look, Democrats ultimately have to make a choice. They care a lot about providing a benefit to illegal immigrants. We're saying to them, if you want to make that deal, then you have to deliver benefits for American families and American taxpayers, too. And if both sides are willing to agree to those terms, Tucker, then we can have a deal.
John Roberts live at the White House for us this morning. John, good morning to you. And tell us about this big White House meeting happening today with some unusual weather happening behind you there, sir.
Yeah, we're in a bit of a pea soup fog here at the White House, but it is kind of pretty this morning. Good morning to you, Sandra. A group of 20 Republican and Democratic senators and members of Congress will be over here at the White House for an 11:30 meeting on immigration. Interesting to note that none of the so-called Big Four in leadership, McConnell, Ryan, Schumer, or Pelosi, will be here. But some of the notables who will be attending: the House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, as well as the whips John Cornyn, Dick Durbin, Steny Hoyer, the Judiciary Committee chairs and co-chairs Chuck Grassley, Dianne Feinstein, Bob Goodlatte, Mike McCall, and Benny Thompson, where the chair of the ranking on the Homeland Security Committee will be here, as well as some other notables: Lindsey Graham, Heidi Heitkamp, and Henry Cuellar. Among the topics of discussion, the fix for the so-called Dreamers Act, that's DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals that was implemented during the Obama administration. The president, though, is going to stick to his guns that if he is going to make concessions on the Dreamers, he wants something in return, including construction of a border wall and other security measures. Here's the White House Senior Advisor for Strategic Communications, Mercedes Slapp, from this morning.
The president has made it very clear he wants to have secure the border, interior enforcement. We want to end chain migration and close the loopholes, including ending the diversity visa lottery. I mean, those are critical components to ensuring that we know who is coming into our country and also to enforce the law.
So you might be asking, well, the president's got to convince Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to get on board any plans, so why aren't they coming over today? White House officials tell Fox News that this meeting is all about getting together a group of people who want to seek a solution and not play politics, get to some sort of basis of agreement, and then sell it on a broader level. The White House is also saying that it's really been driving the bus on this issue for a while, and at some point there needs to be a counter proposal from Congress, one that they haven't seen yet. And Sandra, even though it's still 2 months away, time flies here in Washington, and time is beginning to run out because something has to be done about the Dreamers by the 5th of March.
Sure does. All right. And John, the president's legal team is getting ready for a possible interview with special counsel Robert Mueller. You've talked to them. What did they tell you?
Well, I've talked to some sources who are familiar with what's going on here. And first of all, these sources, say to me, nothing may happen here, all right? It's too preliminary to talk about anything happening at this point, and in the end, nothing may happen. But I'm told that the legal team is expecting that at some point in the next few weeks, as he begins to wrap up his investigation, they believe Robert Mueller will ask for some sort of an interview with the president. There have been some preliminary discussions between the president's legal team and Robert Mueller's office about what form and forum that may take. There may be an in-person interview. I know the legal team would like it to be with Robert Mueller, but you just don't want to turn the special counsel loose on your client, so there would be a defined set of parameters going into any kind of one-on-one interview about what areas will be covered, what questions can and cannot be asked. There's also a couple of other options that they're weighing. The president might submit a set of written answers to questions that were submitted by the special counsel's office. The president might even just do something as simple as swearing out an affidavit that this is his position on the case, and then the special counsel's office has got the sworn statement from the president. Again, nothing may happen here, but there is an expectation that at some point in the next few weeks, Robert Mueller will ask for some sort of interview with the president. So we'll keep a close eye on this.
Certainly a lot of talk about that this morning. John Roberts, thank you.
Thank you.
Another big story watching this morning now, and this is happening from overseas. North and South Korean leadership sitting down for a historic meeting today. The first time in more than 2 years, we're now hearing that both sides have agreed on the following. They will hold talks, apparently, on reducing military tensions. They will actively cooperate for the Olympics next month in Seoul, South Korea. Seoul saying that includes North Korea sending a delegation to the Games. Meanwhile, President Trump scheduled to meet with Defense Secretary Jim Mattis today at the White House amid questions about America's strategy in dealing with the threat from Pyongyang. John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the UN, senior fellow American Enterprise Institute, Fox News contributor. And sir, good day to you.
Good morning.
Pattern for North Korea, as you know, sit down about every 2 years. It has happened as of today. Do you see an opportunity for a breakthrough at this point?
I think these talks represent no chance for a breakthrough. I think the entire purpose the North Koreans had in mind was a propaganda campaign, and it's succeeding very well. You can read or watch in various American news media people talking about what a breakthrough it is and how significant it is. The only reason that this is happening, I fear, is that North Korea thinks it's so close to finally achieving its long-sought objective of getting deliverable nuclear weapons that it's going to buy 6-8 weeks here until after the Olympics of people rhapsodizing over these talks, taking advantage of a weak South Korean government, and trying to counter pressure and ideas within the Trump administration that maybe military force might be necessary against their nuclear program. It's so entirely predictable. It's just unbelievable.
Given that scenario, then you think come March we're back to where we were. Olympics
I think we're back.
Yeah,
I think we're back to where we were right now because I don't think there's any substance to this. North Korea graces the world with its presence at the Winter Olympics. I mean, I can hardly contain myself. This is the kind of propaganda victory that is easily obtained when you're dealing with a South Korean government that's just desperate for some kind of opening to talk to the North Koreans. Nothing will change as a result.
The cameras are going to eat it up, right? Opening ceremonies, North and South Korea walking out together.
This is like deja vu all over again. 2000 Olympics, 2004 Olympics, same kind of government in South Korea, same kind of concessions to North Korea, same total lack of results on the nuclear program.
The strategy for North Korea, how much of this is trying to get between South Korea and this U.S. president?
Oh, I think trying to drive a wedge is always part of North Korea's strategy. It's very hard for President Trump to say in his conversation with South Korean President Moon last week, no, don't talk to them, don't invite them to the Olympics. And everybody knows the dynamic here. I mean, we're going through a game of charades. And it's going to have to play out. I don't see any other alternative. It's just that people should understand this means nothing substantively on the nuclear issue.
Quickly on Iran, this is certification deadline as of this Friday, end of the week. What does the president do?
Well, I don't know what he's going to do. I don't have any inside information. I would abrogate the deal. I would not waive the sanctions. Look, the regime in Tehran has just finished killing some of its citizens for demonstrating against the regime. This is not the time to let up pressure. I think this regime in Tehran's in jeopardy. I don't think it's popular. And this is precisely the point to squeeze them all the harder.
Okay. We have a report now that 4,000 arrests were made during the most recent protest. What do you make of the size of that number? Because it has far exceeded what any international observers had expected.
Right. Well, the government obviously clamped down on external press coverage, so we really don't know a lot about what happened. But I believe, given the breadth and the extent of these demonstrations, the clear, explicit calls for the regime to be overthrown, we've got here a real demonstration just how unpopular and weak the regime is. What it has is the barrel of the gun. That's what sustains the Islamic Revolution, the Revolutionary Guards Corps, the Basiji militia. But I think this is a moment in history. We might see a regime change here if we could help the opposition. I'm not saying tomorrow, but in the near future. And in the meantime, I think we could destabilize the government in Tehran, and that might impede their progress toward nuclear weapons. I would not let up the pressure.
That sounds significant. If you get regime change of this current government in Tehran, what replaces it?
Well, I think the logical step is to let the Iranians figure out how to hold an election. I don't think that requires American involvement. I think there's a good argument that we ought to stay out of that. And let's see who is the most popular political figures inside Iran. A free and open election, I think, is what the people want. It's an educated population. It's young, 70% of the population under 30. That's one of the major sources of discontent. And I think you've got major opposition groups already saying they will give up the nuclear weapons program.
Thank you, sir, for your time today. You don't know what's behind door number 2. John Bolton, thank you, though, in Washington, D.C. And you don't know ultimately whether or not they would be more friendly or more pro-Western. Perhaps, perhaps not. We'll see.
So many important deadlines coming up, including the recertification or not of that Iran nuclear deal, among so many other things. Bill?
Watch it.
All right. A stunning new report now claiming that the source of many of those FBI leaks could have been coming from these two anti-Trump FBI officials, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Remember those anti-Trump text messages? They were also having an affair while working on the Mueller campaign or investigation. What we are now learning about that report and what Republicans are doing to investigate. Jason Chaffetz is fired up, and he will be here on that. Plus this.
Oh, are you happy you voted for me? You are so lucky that I gave you that privilege. The other choice wasn't going to work out too well for the farmers.
President Trump back on the road making his case for America's farmers. Yesterday, big speech in Tennessee. The president saying that his tax reform plan will help grow industries across the nation. Former economics advisor for President Reagan, Art Laffer, will break that down in a moment. Look
forward to hearing from him. Plus, the White House says it would welcome a possible 2020 presidential run by Oprah Winfrey. And late-night talk show host seized on the idea as well.
I'll tell you. It's interesting. I, for one, would love to hear that the State of the Union is strong.
The president's made it very clear what he wants. It's clear what the Democrats want. I'll tell you what I want. I want to see an end to the 15-year bipartisan refusal to enforce the law.
I'm all for comprehensive. I'm all in for that. But we can't do it before the 4th of March. We've got to protect these kids. And obviously, there's going to be a border security element of that.
Why does it take so long to do the right thing? Everyone here knows the type of compromise we need on immigration. And everyone just wants to keep postponing it.
Oh, there you have a sample now. What's on the line? Top Republicans and Democrats sitting down with the president today. Critical meeting on immigration. Can they overcome years of partisan divide on the issue? Adrian Elrod, former director of strategic communications for Hillary Clinton, Rich Lowry, International Review. How you guys doing? Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Bill.
Fix immigration. Give us some money for the border wall / divide / fence, whatever you want to call it. And the dreamers get to stay, and perhaps they even get citizenship at one point. To both of you, I believe if you remove the far right and you remove the far left, there is a deal to be had on this. Rich is...
I think it's possible, but unlikely. And this is the big speed bump in the road, Bill, is that Donald Trump needs something he can plausibly call a wall. That was one of his signature promises in the campaign. It means a lot to him, means a lot to his voters. And the Democrats have portrayed the wall as a symbol of hate, as something as a complete waste of resources. So if they plausibly give him something that he can call a wall, they really can't go home to their voters and sell that. So I think that's going to be the obstacle, and that's the reason why we're probably not going to get a deal.
So you're saying no on a deal. I'm saying it's there, Adrian. I'm saying it's there.
Well, I sure hope you're right.
Do you want it to happen?
Of course we want compromise.
So then would you give the money for whatever border security comes from that
Well,
spending.
look, I think Senator Kamala Harris said it best yesterday when she said, look, I'm all about border security, but I don't want a wall. Absolutely no wall. There's a way to have better border security by beefing up agents at the border, by beefing up more funding for border security agents across the border. But absolutely building a wall is off the table for Democrats. We also want a DACA fix to 800,000 DACA recipients who are living in the United States. President Trump had the ability to renew DACA. He chose not to and to leave it in the hands of Congress. So we also want a DACA fix. This is not rocket science, Bill. There is room for compromise. I'm with you. I hope you're right. But there is room for compromise, and Democrats and Republicans have got to come to the table on this.
Well, look, there's a structural problem also here from Trump's perspective. Democrats can say, oh, here's $5 billion for a wall this year. But if you actually build a wall, that's a multi-year project, maybe 10 years out from now. And what guarantee can you possibly have for continuous funding for this project? So I think it'd be more important to focus on changes of the legal immigration system in exchange for codifying DACA, the end of chain migration the president's talked about a lot, an end to the diversity lottery. And I think those are very important, and I would argue more important than the wall, but I doubt those are going to get done.
Would you give him those changes on immigration, Adrian? Would you grant it that?
Yeah, look, I'm certainly not. I'm not the one. No, I'm not negotiating this bill, but Democrats have made it very firm that the funding bill is the last train leaving the station for DACA.
Got it. But then you know what we've got, Adrian? We got this stubborn thing called videotape. It's ancient. It came long before Bitcoin. In fact, because of videotape, we have this from 2016.
We'll authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders. Yes, we need tougher border security and stronger enforcement measures. Yes, we need more resources for customs and border agents and more detention beds.
That's a young-looking Barack Obama. It was 2016. That was 2006. You know the other stubborn thing about videotape? It goes back to 1996 as well, when this was spoken.
Tonight, I announce I will sign an executive order to deny federal contracts to businesses that hire illegal immigrants. Let me be very clear about this. We are still a nation of immigrants. We should be proud of it. We are also a nation of law.
How things have changed. Adrian?
Yes. No, look, I think President Clinton and President Obama were speaking to issues at that time when they were talking about border security. But I think also, Bill, what these videos reiterate is this has been an issue that's been going on for a long time. Both Democrats and Republicans, especially the moderates in both parties, are looking for a compromise, a real solution when it comes to immigration reform. So I think if Democrats and Republicans can come to a deal on DACA as part of this budget fix, then maybe we'll see it.
You wonder whether or not Democrats want to give the president a victory on that. We can debate that next time. Thank you, Rich. Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you, Bill.
Soon. You bet. You're sad.
Two tech giants facing lawsuits that claim discrimination against conservative voices in Silicon Valley. Google and Twitter both under fire. The details in a live report next. Plus, White House senior policy advisor Stephen Miller firing back at CNN after that contentious interview. Why he says he was treated very unfairly.
Like many things CNN says, the latest story has the most important virtue of all CNN stories of being not true. CNN has been extraordinarily biased, extraordinarily unfair to the president, and is not giving their information, their viewers honest information.
Quick note here, Fox News confirming former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney was treated for prostate cancer over the summer. Aides say the prognosis is good. The cancer was surgically removed. It did not spread. The news comes amid speculation that Governor Romney, now a youthful 70, plans to campaign for Senator Orrin Hatch's open Senate seat in the state of Utah.
Google and Twitter both facing lawsuits alleging discrimination against conservative viewpoints. A conservative publisher suing Twitter for banning him from the platform, as well as a former Google engineer filing a class action lawsuit, claiming the tech giant discriminates against white men and conservatives. Here's James Damore explaining why he thinks he was fired.
There's continued harassment and career sabotage of anyone that expresses a conservative viewpoint. And there's constant shaming and attacks against white men within Silicon Valley.
William LaJeunesse is live in LA for us this morning. William, what are some of the details coming out of this lawsuit?
Well, Sandra, the lawsuit contains some powerful accusations about how Google treats employees with conservative views, so we put it at the top of the FoxNews.com website for you to read. It is contentious, but also an important case because of the influence that Silicon Valley has over what we read and see. The politics of Silicon Valley skews to the left. That's not a secret. What the lawsuit contends is that liberal point of view dictates and influences the news and content that it presents, and that it discriminates against conservative opinion. From this complaint, here's some of the allegations. Number one, that Google belittles and punishes conservatives for their political views, that they enforce illegal hiring quotas for women and minorities, and that they shame managers who fail to meet those quotas. Also, that it mocks white male employees with booze at meetings. In the complaint, Damore's memo, he pointed out some of these inconsistencies and circulated that internally, and yet the reaction? One Google director said his essay was repulsive and intellectually dishonest, that he promoted violence against Damore because of his memo, and one email said, "You're, quote, a misogynist and a terrible person. I will keep hounding you until one of us is fired." Something.
There's just so much shaming that's happening because if you ever open up that you have certain viewpoints, then you'll be your career will be sabotaged.
Now, Google CEO fired Damore for, quote, perpetuating harmful gender stereotypes. Google says they will defend the lawsuit, and you can find that out. Well, take a look for yourself. It will probably be several months before we see anything in court.
And William, what can you tell us about this lawsuit against Twitter?
Well, it's very different. So the plaintiff there, Charles Johnson, is a conservative activist and a former Breitbart reporter. Twitter banned him in 2015 after he asked for donations to help take out a conservative, or rather a civil rights activist. He said that tweet was taken out of context and for spreading false rumors that the president was gay. Now, the lawsuit filed Monday, Johnson's attorney claims that Twitter banned him for his political views and that the suspension was a judgment call because he didn't make a direct violent threat. Twitter has declined to comment. Twitter says the Twitter's guidelines about who gets in and who gets out have always been kind of controversial. And some supporters of this guy say that, listen, there's a lot of false rumors posted about President Trump, and those individuals are not taken off. So it's about what are the rules of Twitter, and that are they strictly enforced or only enforced against conservatives?
Couple very interesting lawsuits there. We'll keep following them. William LaJeunesse, thank you.
Question now, did two FBI officials leak sensitive information on the Russia matter to the media? That is the question today as we're learning more about a stinging new report claiming just that. Jason Chaffetz's on deck. He'll join us live to answer it coming up. Plus, there's this.
President Trump was on the turf in Atlanta last night for a thrilling college football national championship. The instant classic ending to the all-SEC showdown. What a game last night. House and Senate committees are now reportedly looking into whether top officials in the Russia investigation leaked information to the media. It's all prompted by text messages between those anti-Trump FBI officials, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, shortly before Election Day 2016. Here are two of the messages obtained by The Hill. Page texting, quote, article is out, but hidden behind paywall, so can't read it. Strzok replied saying, Wall Street Journal, boy, that was fast. Should I find it and tell the team? House Intelligence Committee member Trey Gowdy, who has been at the forefront of these investigations, sounding off on this last night, saying he had concerns about FBI leaks before the texts became public.
I can't speak for the Clinton investigation, but I can tell you with respect to the investigation into the Trump campaign, we have serious concerns about people with the Bureau talking to various media outlets that weren't authorized to speak on behalf of the Bureau. So I'd love to tell you I'm surprised that someone at the FBI may have been leaking, but I'm not.
Joining me now is former Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz, a Fox News contributor. I'm sure you're going to tell me you're not shocked by any of this, but it's really something, isn't it, Congressman, to look at those text messages and see the manufactured surprise they tried to act out about this coming out in the Wall Street Journal. Clearly an indication to anybody reading those that they had something to do with those leaks.
Yeah, I mean, assuming these text messages are true. Remember, Peter Strzok is the senior-most counterintelligence person at the FBI. He's having an affair with this woman, and he's trading thousands upon thousands of text messages. And it does look that the only collusion they're able to see is the collusion to actually take these stories and get them placed in places like the Wall Street Journal. Now, I don't blame any of the media for taking this information, but when you have a senior-most FBI official doing this, instead of doing their job, then we got a real problem there.
Well, so this is obviously sparking major questions from Congress. You just heard Trey Gowdy, a House Oversight, a job you know very well, saying this is serious stuff here. So where does it go?
Now, remember, these are the same messages from the same people that they didn't want Congress, i.e. the American people, to see. It was back in August that Devin Nunes is asking for this information, having to issue a subpoena, and literally the senior-most people at the Department of Justice in the Trump administration refusing to give this information, to the point that the Speaker of the House has to get engaged with the senior-most people at the FBI in order to get these materials. So Trey Gowdy and Devin Nunes and Tom Rooney and Mike Conaway, the people at the House Intelligence Committee, they're just now getting these, and they're going to have to, siphon through some 10,000 text messages in addition to all the other documents that we have not yet seen.
But it's such a great point that you make that Peter Strzok, he was a serious part of this investigation, right? I mean, Democrats, you hear many times will say, well, there was a lot of people that had their hand in this investigation. He was just one of them, but he played a key role in all of this, Congressman.
He didn't just, look, he had a very senior position at the FBI. He didn't just have a bias against Donald Trump, but he was literally working with the other senior people there, people like Bruce Orr, who again gets demoted again. His wife, Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie, is working at a company, Fusion GPS. They only have 15 or so employees, yet there's millions of dollars that are going. And where does that money go? It goes overseas to try to get information about Donald Trump. And it just absolutely smells and looks so bad. And that's why the Inspector General's pounding on this. They'll have a report that should be out in the March timeframe. And then you have the House Intelligence Committee also looking at it as well.
So we don't know what exactly happened with Bruce Orr, right? If he resigned or if he was actually removed from the position. But this is the second time we've seen this DOJ official tied to that anti-Trump dossier demoted.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear at this point that his wife did work at the company where they were actually doing an investigation. She is a fact witness. That is the spouse of a senior FBI official who's working with Peter Strzok. I mean, you put this in a movie, Sandra, nobody's even going to believe it, but this is evidently what was going on at the FBI. At the same time, you had Director Comey testifying that the FBI was not leaking any information, only to find out later, after he left, that Director Comey was leaking information. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Congressman, what do you have to say more broadly speaking about a possible anti-Trump bias within the FBI and the DOJ?
Look, if you want to vote for the Democratic candidate, that's everybody's right. But when you're actually what appears to me to be colluding with other people to come to a conclusion, to plant stories right before an election. Of course, as a senior-most person at the FBI, the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, they're going to report this. But if you're spending your time and effort with the American taxpayers' dollars to try to affect the election, those people should be in jail. That is not what we hire them to do. We expect them to go find the facts, present those to the prosecutors, go to a grand jury, and see if there's been any criminal wrongdoing. Not to go play politics by planting stories in the national media.
Do you anticipate a lot more to come out of this? As you mentioned, Trey Gowdy just got his hands on all of those key witness interviews and documents. He's going to be poring over them. There's a lot to go through. Do you anticipate that there's going to be a lot more that we learn in the coming days?
I think the most seminal document or report that's going to come out of this will be from the Inspector General. Michael Horowitz, 450 employees at the Department of Justice looking under the hood. They're the ones that evidently found these text messages. I think when they come out with their report and Michael Horowitz goes before the House Oversight Committee, that will be a very revealing moment. And it comes from a request that I originally put in, but I know Elijah Cummings been supportive of this, and these are nonpartisan people. That report coming in March will be the most important document coming out.
Congressman Jason Chaffetz, it's always good to see you. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks, Sam.
Here we go. You ready?
All right, bring it.
College football's biggest night of the year came down to one final play in Atlanta, but before the game, there was an on-field visit for the commander-in-chief. Check it out in Atlanta. There you go, national anthem. President Trump there in the 50-yard line. Crowd gave him a big welcome. There were a few boos trickling through Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but then we get to the action, and man, was this something else. Georgia, Alabama, final game of the year in overtime, and here was your game winner.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
I just wish I could have seen the thing, right?
Whoa.
Alabama's backup freshman quarterback who took over after halftime hit receiver Devontae Smith completing this epic comeback. Alabama trailed 13-0 early in the game. They win it 26-23. Alabama's 5th national title going back to 2009, and that is absolute domination of college football. What a game. Congratulations to both teams and their fans. It was really something else.
Clearly a thrilled Nick Saban there. It was an unbelievable game. And I mean, a hero was born. And Nick Saban proving his chops as a college football coach once again, pulling your starting quarterback in the championship game at halftime and putting in a freshman.
Pretty amazing.
An unbelievable move by everybody. All right. Exciting game. Meanwhile, President Trump touting the roaring stock market during a speech to American farmers.
The stock market is hitting one all-time record after another. Everybody happy with your 401k? Because if you're not, there's something very wrong.
The president also says tax cuts will help bring historic relief to the heartland and the middle class. A former Reagan economics advisor is here to weigh in.
Also, big legal victory for Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy. He's been in a standoff with the federal government for years over his property. Details on his case coming up in moments.
World, here we are. We're fighting for freedom in the United States, and we're going to have freedom in the United States. We have the best Constitution. We have the best land, and it is a promised land.
Look for Crest Gum Detoxify in stores today.
A judge dismissing charges against Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy, his sons, and another supporter. Bundy made headlines after challenging the federal government's authority over his cattle ranch. It culminated in an armed standoff with the feds in 2014, you'll remember, which led to the charges. The group had been accused of conspiring to impede or injure federal officers. When agents moved to seize Bundy's cattle,
When since did the federal government supposed to have an army that comes against we the people? When did that ever happen in America? It happened on Bundy Ranch. They stuck their guns down our throats. And that is definitely not what our founding fathers intended to happen in America.
the judge says Bundy and the other defendants' rights were violated when the government withheld evidence.
The American dream is roaring back to life, and we have just signed into law the most significant tax cuts and reforms in American history. Every Democrat in the House and every Democrat in the Senate voted against tax cuts for the American farmer and for the American worker. But Republicans came together and delivered historic relief for our farmers and our middle class. And it wasn't easy.
So the president went on the road. That was from Nashville, taking his economic message to the heartland, touting success of the tax bill during a speech with American farmers in Tennessee. Art Laffer's in Tennessee, former Reagan economics advisor. How you doing, Art? Good morning to you.
Very well, Bill. Thank you. I'm doing great. He was right here in Nashville.
Yeah,
I mean, that was cool.
Why didn't you
it's
go?
Very cool.
I didn't go. I didn't. I don't do those things, but I watched him. You can see it better on Fox TV, by the way.
That's right. You're too cool for that stuff anyway. Listen, he was selling the tax plan. He was the repeal of the estate tax, which American farmers do not like, selling less regulation. How'd he do?
He did beautifully. I mean, it was a brilliant speech. And I love that he got off the personal stuff. He didn't do that. He talked about policies and issues, which is wonderful. It was a home run. I mean, it really was a home run. Now, you got to remember that Tennessee and Nashville are very much Trump country. But still, he did a great job.
Okay. He did not mention NAFTA. Do you think there's news to be made on that event?
Well, I have always believed that Donald Trump is a free trader, even when those speeches in the campaign were coming through. I mean, my joke was, how can a man who imported 2 wives not be for free trade? Just joking. But when you look at Donald Trump, he's a businessman. He understands this stuff. I don't think Trump is against free trade. I think he wants to get better deals. These deals are bad. They're poorly written. They're bad deals. They don't do what they should do. And I laud him for rewriting the deals, and I don't think he's going to be anti-free trade. So that's where I'm coming out.
How long have you been working on that joke?
Long time. Did you like it?
That's okay.
Come on. I try real hard not to be boring.
Sandra looked up, so I mean, if that counts for something, okay.
Oh, good. Well, Sandra, thank you.
Listen, no Democrats voted for this. Do you think they're living with the sense of regret in next fall, or? Can they sell a no vote?
You have an off-year election with a newly elected president, so almost always you lose seats in the House and the Senate. I understand all that, but I would much rather be on our side of the aisle than on their side. We've got the facts, the issues, and the response and the performance on our side. They've just got these silly words that they just keep repeating and repeating and repeating, having no content whatsoever and no basis in fact.
Yeah. Well, the other thing he talked about was the farmer being able to deduct 100% of any business investment. That's great for a farmer, and
yes, it is.
It will likely lead to a lot of productivity. Why can't everybody do that?
They should.
Why don't you, or a percentage of it anyway? It doesn't have to be 100%, but I can't do it. You might be able to do it if you're an LLC or a pass-through.
Yeah, but you can do that if you're a business as well. You've got the 5-year 100% write-off, before it starts phasing down. And it should be for everyone on all capital expenditures. But, when you get into the making of these silly bills and you have all these things they trade off, 1,000 pages for what should be 4 pages. You should have all of that stuff done. And now they've got these groups get that and the other ones get this. And it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, in the end, are you happy with... Are you happy, Art, now that you've digested this for a couple of weeks?
I am really happy.
How come?
It's much better than I expected it would be. We got the rate down to 21%, which is pretty good. We got the highest marginal income tax rate down from 39.6 to 37. We got a lot of the pass-throughs to get a 20% write-off of the income, so it brings theirs down to, 29.6 or something on their taxes, which is great. We've got territoriality instead of global taxation. We've got all of these wonderful features that I'm really excited about, and I think this will lead to a lot of prosperity.
I hope you come on back real soon, okay, Art?
I would love to.
You're doing stand-up tonight. Where is that in Nashville? We'll come and see you. Thank you.
You got to admit, Colbert has not invited me. That just want you to know that.
Not yet. Thank you, Art Laffer in Nashville.
Thank you very much, Bill.
I fully admit to looking up on that one. All right, a big meeting at the White House today at issue getting an immigration deal done. Is it possible? Former White House Deputy Chief of Staff Karl Rove joins us next hour to break it all down.
Also, failure to launch on a top secret and very expensive satellite. It fails to reach orbit. We'll try and find out why. Live, coming up on a live report.
A botched mission for SpaceX. The top secret U.S. satellite reportedly failed to reach orbit and plummeted back into the atmosphere. The satellite, named Zuma, launched from Florida Sunday and apparently did not separate from the SpaceX rocket. Phil Keating covering all this live in Miami for us this morning. Hey, Phil.
Hi, Sandra. Well, everyone thought it was in low Earth orbit, but it turns out it was in fact far from it. It certainly looked picture perfect. Everything did for Zuma's launch from the launch pad at Cape Canaveral, all the way up until the live feed stopped. Now, that was due and planned. because of the classified nature of the mission. A top-secret payload, presumably a military or spy satellite, and a full day went by before this catastrophic loss first became known publicly. As Zuma rocketed up atop SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, the first stage separated and then the feed stopped, per customer Northrop Grumman's request. It's now believed that not long thereafter, the satellite failed to separate from the second stage rocket, so instead of going further into orbit, Zuma likely plummeted back to Earth with the second stage breaking up in the atmosphere. Per SpaceX an hour ago, for clarity, after review of all data to date, Falcon 9 did everything correctly on Sunday night. If we or others find otherwise based on further review, we'll report it immediately, opening up the possibility that maybe the satellite itself was in fact flawed. SpaceX's webcast ended with no mention of the reportedly multi-billion tax dollar payload disaster. Instead, we saw the successful upright landing of that Falcon 9 rocket's first stage on the bullseye. Now, 16 months ago, Facebook's $200 million internet satellite went up in flames atop a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket on the launch pad. SpaceX is cleared for national security launches, but right now they are in stiff competition with Boeing and Lockheed Martin's United Launch Alliance for those contracts, which are very lucrative. As of right now, no comment at all from the U.S. government on this catastrophic and costly satellite loss.
Wow.
Sandra?
Phil Keating, thank you.
From overseas.
A victory for Olympic diplomacy. North and South Korea reaching a deal on the Winter Games, claiming they have also paved the way for talks to reduce military tensions. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith on this lovely Tuesday morning.
It's going to be in the 30s today, I think.
I'm balmy.
Hot dog. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. Major breakthrough giving North Koreans the chance to compete in the Olympics, but apparently that's where it ends. They're opening the door of the military talks, they say, aimed at preventing accidental conflict. But John Bolton, the ambassador last hour, said, despite all this, do not be fooled.
I think we're back to where we were right now, because I don't think there's any substance to this. North Korea graces the world with its presence at the Winter Olympics. I mean, I can hardly contain myself. This is the kind of propaganda victory that is easily obtained when you're dealing with a South Korean government that's just desperate for some kind of opening to talk to the North Koreans.
Senior Foreign Affairs correspondent Greg Palcott is live in Seoul, South Korea this morning. What can you tell us, Greg, about today's statement?
Hi, Sandra. On a snowy night in Seoul, we can tell you that folks here are seeing it as some kind of a breakthrough in relations between North and South Korea. But experts on the ground here tell us there are dangers, too. This all came after 11 hours of talks in Panmunjom, DMZ, the first official talks in 2 years. The two sides did agree to military talks to avoid accidents, negotiations to avoid problems, another military hotline. They also agreed on the main topic on the agenda, that is that North Korea would send a large delegation, athletes, officials, and others to the Winter Olympics here in South Korea next month. The details to be worked out. But the bigger issues, yes, were left unaddressed. In fact, when Kim Jong-un's nuclear program was raised by a South Korean delegate, a North Korean delegate shot it right down. Here's what one analyst told us tonight.
Looks like North Korea, to me, have got the slightly upper hand. This is a very easy way for them to, on the surface, relieve a lot of pressure, especially that diplomatic isolation that the Trump administration have been pushing for so much.
That expert does, in fact, note, however, that South Korea is also a winner. It did want peaceful games, Sandra.
Greg, what does it mean for the U.S. and the broader issues of North Korean nukes and missiles?
Yeah, Sandra, it kind of catches the United States out. President Trump, in fact, has been praising these talks, and some experts we talked to here say that his pressure on North Korea might have led Pyongyang to take this route towards South Korea. But in fact, others do tell us it does drive a wedge between the United States and South Korea. And the danger also, this maximum pressure that the Trump administration is trying to put on North Korea regarding its missiles, regarding its nukes. Well, that could be eased off. There could be more concessions. But finally, I got to tell you, from talking to the people on the ground here in the last couple of days, they are relieved. They want a break. It's been a very tough past year. They want to see a possible diplomatic route out of it, and this just might be the way out. We will see. Back to you, Sandra.
All right, Greg Palcott in Seoul, South Korea for us. Thank you.
Big doings from overseas now. We'll keep an eye on that. Also watch this story this morning as we await House Republican leadership. They begin their first briefing in the new year. President Trump is getting ready to meet a group of lawmakers at the White House, Republicans and Democrats, to talk about immigration reform. He says he's open to a deal with Democrats, but not without strict border security. So where's the give? Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel live on the Hill now. Mike, good morning to you. Where do things stand on immigration as of this hour?
Well, Bill, 20 lawmakers, as you mentioned, are heading to the White House today, bipartisan members of both the House and Senate, and the hope is they can reach agreement on border security and enforcement. However, top Senate Democrats are warning the White House about getting in the middle of very sensitive talks.
The White House issued a series of unreasonable demands entirely outside the scope of our ongoing negotiations about DACA and border security. It's part of a pattern of behavior on the part of this White House during sensitive bipartisan negotiations.
Democrats feel like they have some leverage, so they're pushing for immigration now, and they are trying to essentially get it as part of these budget talks and rejecting calls by President Trump for the border wall.
Yeah, I don't know if they go hand in hand or if you have to get the budget deal first. I mean, this is part of this negotiation now. What about those budget talks, Mike? Where are they now?
Well, it sounds like they're struggling to come up with an overall number, and so the bottom line is the longer this goes, the more likely they are to come up with a temporary funding extension. Another one of those, Senate Republican Whip John Cornyn telling Fox every day that goes by, it is more and more likely they're going to need to do another short-term funding extension. Cornyn says it is more likely they'll need another continuing resolution.
Everybody has a budget except the United States of America, which is the most powerful country in the history of the world. And we don't have a budget because the House and the Senate and the Republicans and the Democrats can't agree, and it's damned embarrassing.
They are trying to also cram in money for hurricane and wildfire relief. And so when you look at complicated issues like immigration, disaster funding, and a budget, it has all gotten very complicated here on Capitol Hill. Bill.
All right, Mike, thank you. What else is new? From the Hill. Thanks, Mike. Sandra.
President Trump standing firm on his pledge to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border, saying funding for the government is the only way he can reach a deal with Democrats on DACA. Meanwhile, the Trump administration announcing it is ending special protections for 200,000 Salvadoran immigrants. Let's bring in Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner. To Bill's point, what's new? I mean, there's a lot going on. Here we are only in the second week of the new year. A couple big meetings happening. We're waiting on that GOP news conference, the first of 2018. And then that big bipartisan meeting with the president on immigration reform. What do you expect out of all this today, Byron?
Well, things are operating on a couple of tracks here. You have a couple of dates, two dates to remember. One is January 19th and the other is March 5th. As you were just talking about, January 19th is the deadline to pass a government funding bill or face a partial government shutdown. We've all seen that kind of drama before. Now, the Trump administration has said that it would like to pass a clean government funding bill. That is just a bill to just keep the government going. But some Democrats want to attach a measure to legalize DACA recipients to that. And if they don't get what they want, they would allow the government to shut down. Now, they made threats like that in December, and they didn't follow up on them. So we'll see if they do it then. Now, the other date, March 5th, is the date that DACA will expire, according to the president's order from last September. So they have to do something by then concerning the status of these nearly 800,000 DACA recipients. And that's where the dealing for the border wall is coming in. Trump knows that Democrats desperately want to legalize all of those DACA recipients, and Democrats know that Trump desperately wants his wall. Now, is there some sort of deal they can make about that?
You just heard from Mike Emanuel's reporting, Byron, that Democrats at this point, they feel like they have leverage heading into all these negotiations. Where are Republicans negotiable on their demands at this point?
Well, when you look at first of all, on the question of a government shutdown, I think Democrats don't have the kind of leverage they are threatening now or they think they might have. On the question of DACA, where both sides want something, Democrats have pretty much pledged to throw their bodies in front of a wall. They want to stop it at any in any event. But there are some people, some supporters of the president's, talking about some other measure, maybe a down payment on the wall with then authorization for some sort of revenue stream that would come from a wall, that is user fees like people who cross borders or visas that are issued, some sort of arrangement to create a funding source in the future going forward for a wall. Is that something that Democrats would agree to? Right now, I'm sure they'd say no, but we'll see what they say as March 5th gets closer.
I just wonder, Byron, is today a good first step in this immigration reform, in the dealings and the talks ongoing? It's a bipartisan group getting together. I think there's more Republicans than Democrats. The president will be in the room. Is this a good sign that potentially a bipartisan deal will get done?
Well, it will allow the president to hear from Democrats, including some moderate Democrats, to see what, if anything, they might accept. Because, look, if Democrats are absolutely united against a wall, there's 49 of them in the Senate. If they are absolutely, totally united, no wall, I mean, that's going to be very difficult for the president. So I think today is a way for him to take their temperature and to see if there's some sort of arrangement like the one I was just talking about that they might be able to accept.
And as far as that first date that you're talking about, January 19th, funding the government, a possible government shutdown, what are the chances at this point? As we're looking in that room there, that GOP news conference about to begin, you'll likely hear about this. What are the chances at this point, Byron?
Well, you just heard Mike Emanuel talk about the kick the can solution, which is coming back up, came up in December and has come up many, many times in the past. You have this deadline. It's coming. It's January 19th. But all Congress would have to do is pass a continuing resolution. That is, just keep the spending going as it is now for some period of time, on the belief, maybe it's a fiction, that they'll be able to come to some sort of more comprehensive agreement in the future. But I think right now, as Mike reported, the possibility of a kick-the-can solution is probably getting
And then
higher.
we'll have this lovely conversation all over again, won't we, Byron?
Over and over
and over again. We've been there before, and we may be there again soon. January 19th is next Friday. We'll keep watching all of this for you. Byron York, thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
I want to take you from Washington back here in New York City. Fox News Alert. This is the FBI Director, Christopher Wray now. He's speaking at the International Cybersecurity Conference here in Manhattan. He says unbreakable encryption is an urgent public safety issue. He says in 2017, the FBI could not access nearly 8,000 devices. Now, the tech companies and a lot of digital security experts have expressed concern about the internet security and empowering hackers if you allow the government to get into your phone. This is a big story during the San Bernardino shootings. It came up again in Orlando, came up again in Las Vegas, and so many other cases here. But Christopher Wray is making his case here in New York City. We'll bring you more headlines from that when we get them. In the meantime, Christopher Wray is making his case here in New York City. We'll bring you more headlines from that when we get them. In the meantime, as we've been telling you, we're also awaiting a big meeting at the White House between President Trump and leading lawmakers from both sides. House Republicans getting ready, meanwhile, to take the podium in their news briefings. So as they happen side by side, we will bring you news on that. Plus, there is this. Check it out.
Everybody's talking about the big speech Oprah made. And a lot of people are saying that maybe she should run for president. It'll be weird at her State of the Union when Congress keeps checking under their seats for a free car. They're like, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car.
So could we be looking at a Trump versus Oprah race in 2020? We discussed why Oprah could be, is what she's now saying about this possible matchup.
She's running. White House senior policy advisor Stephen Miller slamming CNN after a testy exchange with Jake Tapper on Sunday. What Stephen Miller says about what happened from his perspective in moments.
I think that that like many things CNN says, the latest story has the most important virtue of all CNN stories of being not true. But I was glad to have people hear what I said on camera and off camera, which that CNN has been extraordinarily biased, extraordinarily unfair to the president, and is not giving their information, their viewers honest information.
White House senior policy advisor Stephen Miller on Tucker Carlson last night, firing back at CNN, slamming the network after his combative interview with Jake Tapper over the weekend. Howard Kurtz is a Fox News media analyst and the host of Media Buzz. It was a contentious interview over the weekend. Stephen Miller last night took the opportunity with Tucker to say just how biased he thinks that network is.
Yeah, it was a train wreck interview on both sides. And I think that's in part what Stephen Miller wanted, because White House doesn't usually send top guests to CNN. And so basically Miller's goal was threefold. He wanted to trash Steve Bannon, he wanted to trash author Michael Wolff, and he wanted to beat up on CNN, which he called a sort of a hotbed of anti-Trump hysteria. Jake Tapper, the anchor, shouldn't have called him obsequious. He got a little condescending at times. But in fairness, he was trying to get control of the interview as Miller's filibustered and said, I just need 3 minutes to say whatever I want. Well, no anchor allows that. And so it ended up being good TV, but not great,
was it okay
great lightning
to
discussion.
end the interview like he did? Did you agree with that move by Tapper?
I thought it was a little dramatic, and I also thought for Jake Tapper to come back and say to his viewers, welcome back to planet Earth, seemed to give fodder to those who think that CNN is not fair to the White House. At the same time, you know, this is great for Stephen Miller. President Trump tweeted, wow, Miller did such a great job. Jake Tapper's a flunky. He's not. He's an experienced journalist who worked at ABC News. I don't think he handled it perfectly, but I think the White House and Steve Miller are very happy to have the focus on CNN as opposed to the questions that Tapper might have wanted to ask about.
All right, I have to move on to Oprah. You've written quite the piece exploring this big question about will she or won't she run in 2020. Your piece, The Pundits Swoon Over Oprah for 2020, but running for president is brutal, you write. In the first line of your piece, Howie, you write, Oprah Winfrey suddenly has the best of all worlds. A flood of gushing praise about the possibility of running for president without actually having to do it.
She must be loving it, and it's as though she gave a free card to every pundit in America because they're enjoying wallowing in this. Look, Oprah is a very charismatic figure. She has a great life story. I can see why she generates a lot of excitement on the Democratic side. And, you know, the idea of a TV billionaire with no political experience running and winning the White House, I guess that could happen. But in the end, she's not going to do it, because why would she want to expose herself to, you know, a year and a half of constant personal attacks, vilification? And where does she stand on the issues? Does Oprah have opinions on Chinese trade or arming Syrian rebels or immigration chain migration, for example? You know, she hasn't really demonstrated that she has a great hunger to be part of the political process.
It almost seems like rather than her coming up with this idea, everybody else came up with it, and now she's considering it. I mean, how much of a reality do you think this is, Howie?
Well, people around her are saying, yeah, she's considering she might run, because this is great. This is great for her brand. She's gotten 36 hours now of absolutely fabulous coverage. But she told the Bloomberg reporter backstage after that Golden Globe speech that she didn't have any plans to do it. And I think celebrities love to stoke this speculation. She certainly could be a player. She obviously is a friend of Barack Obama and all of that. But getting in the arena herself, we would all love it in the news business, Sandra, but I don't see it happening.
Well, speaking of the news business, Howie, one of the moments she sounded so campaign-esque the other night was when she answered questions about the press. She praised the press. She said the press is under siege. There's no bigger supporter of the press than she is. That was certainly a moment.
Yeah, I think, you know, in many ways, she very deftly painted herself as an oppositional figure to Donald Trump without mentioning the president's name, praising the press, talking about women, not just the Hollywood women who have been subjected to sexual misconduct, abuse, and worse, but ordinary women out there. So, you know, the appeal that she would have to women, to minorities, is very obvious. I can see why consultants are salivating, but you have to really have this incredible hunger to run for president, to subject yourself to questions about your personal life. Even today is a piece about some of the questionable medical treatment she has endorsed in the past. The most popular day for Oprah would be the day she declared, and after that, she'd be dealing with a lot of stuff.
And you highlight a lot of the headlines in the newspapers. Washington Post, it's difficult to totally dismiss the idea of Winfrey 2020. Daily Beast, Oprah 2020 cannot be laughed off. This could really work. Really interesting stuff.
We don't want to let it go.
Thanks for coming on this morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
In a moment here, we'll take you to that Republican press conference on the Hill. But first, a man busted for running across the tarmac at a busy international airport. We'll tell you what that's all about coming up in a moment.
Plus, a historic announcement from North and South Korea today, what the two sides made public. We will have a live report from the State Department.
We're going to be smart this time. We're going to make sure that whatever happens makes the United States safer and make sure that we denuclearize the peninsula.
This wild scene at Miami International Airport after a man hops a fence and sprints across several runways. Police rushing to the scene yesterday, placing him in custody within minutes. WSVN TV reporting the man told police he was dropped off at the airport for a job interview. When he realized he was in the wrong place, he decided to take a shortcut. He's now facing several charges.
25 past, what to believe out of this Korean meeting earlier today. A rare joint statement from the North and South has gone public. The two nations expected to hold talks on reducing military tension. North Korea will be sending an Olympic delegation to the Winter Games next month in South Korea. Rich Edson from the State Department watching this. And Rich, good morning to you. John Bolton was dubious, to say the least, last hour about productivity from this meeting. But South Korea apparently is driving these talks. Let's talk about that.
And, you know, John Bolton's not the only one who is doubtful of the outcome of these, but South Korea is pushing for even more substantial talks to talk about military tensions, family reunifications, this after the first discussions in about 2 years between North and South Korea. South Korea is also proposing that the two countries march together at the Olympic ceremonies, at the opening ceremonies in South Korea next month. To that idea of North Korea participating in this international sporting event, Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, tweets, allowing Kim Jong-un's North Korea to participate in the Winter Olympics would give legitimacy to the most illegitimate regime on the planet. I'm confident South Korea will reject this absurd overture and fully believe that if North Korea goes to the Winter Olympics, we do not. The U.S. and allies boycotted the 1980 Games in Moscow after the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. 4 years later, the Soviets returned that for the Olympic Games in Los Angeles in 1984. There are analysts who are skeptical of North Korea's sincerity here. They say this is just an attempt for North Korea to drive a wedge between the United States and South Korea. They said now that North Korea has gotten access to the Olympics, it has now gotten these high-profile discussions, and the U.S. and South Korea have suspended joint military operations during the Olympics, and North Korea has given up nothing, Bill.
Also on Iran, the president, senior officials are talking about the nuclear deal. There is a certification deadline that hits this Friday. What is the latest there, Rich?
Major deadlines on Iran over the next 10 days or so. First off, to keep the United States in the Iran nuclear deal. And despite the president's hatred, stated hatred for this agreement, the U.S. is still in this deal. The president has to waive certain sanctions every so often to keep the United States in the deal. Those waiver deadlines are upcoming over the next 10 days. On top of that, the administration must also certify whether Iran is complying with the nuclear agreement. In October, the administration said it wasn't. It gets another chance to do so again on Friday. Bill.
Thank you, Rich. Rich Edson watching all that from the State Department. Nice to see you.
Fox News alert, a critical meeting on immigration set to get underway 30 minutes from now at the White House between President Trump and lawmakers from both parties. Meanwhile, House Republicans are holding a news conference right now. We expect many questions on immigration reform. Once we see that they have begun questioning, we will take you there live once that gets underway. Karl Rove, by the way, is on deck.
Also, in a moment here, a bombshell report claiming new evidence that the FBI may be the ones responsible for some of these leaks to the media. What we're learning about those anti-Trump FBI agents in a moment, coming up next right here.
One of the lines of questioning that we have for the FBI agents we've talked to so far is who within the Bureau is authorized to talk to the media, because I can't speak for the Clinton investigation, but I can tell you with respect to the investigation into the Trump campaign, we have serious concerns about people with the Bureau talking to various media outlets that weren't authorized to speak on behalf of the Bureau.
Fox News Alert now awaiting this meeting at the White House 30 minutes from now. President Trump, lawmakers from both parties engaged in a fiery immigration showdown over DACA. Democrats complain the president is making unreasonable demands as they work to shield nearly 1 million DACA beneficiaries from deportation ahead of a March deadline.
We believe there should be border security, real border security, and help for the Dreamers.
What they want to do is take 800,000 Dreamers and cap them. Democrats have to hold the line.
Carl Rowe, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Carl, how are you? Good morning. We may get interrupted here in a moment, okay, by Paul Ryan and some others. But great to see you in the new year. Here we go, okay? Statement from the White House just minutes ago. They're asking for secure the border with a wall, closing dangerous enforcement loopholes, and eliminating visa lottery, ending chain migration. Okay. I think there's a deal to be had here. You take out the extremes on the right and the extremes on the left, and you have a president who can wedge the middle. Am I onto something, or am I way off?
You are. But for that to work, that you just read a very long list of border security issues, and in order to get that done, that kind of deal is going to require the president to give up some of that in order to get what he really wants, which was the border wall. And right now the Democrats are they're the opposite. They want one thing. They want DACA and only DACA or insufficient border security measures. So the president said his performance in this meeting is going to be critical to getting the deal done. Okay, but I think the deportation issue can be taken care of. And this is the kind of president who can find that middle ground. Well, and look, I think Republicans can stand behind him and say, okay, you front the thing, and say, okay, I'll support you, and that's why I get my right. But it's going to require the Democrats to do something they've done once before and don't want to do a second time. In 2006, Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden all supported President Bush's border wall, 650, nearly 700 miles of border wall along our southern border. They voted for it. Now, President Trump wants to extend that, not to the 2,300-mile border, but further along the border. And now they're saying, no, not 1 mile more, and not even repair the wall we've got. These walls wear out after a while, the fencing and the walls. So the Democrats have got to also move. Everybody's got to move. The president's got to settle for a smaller list of border security measures than he has laid out, and smaller number of immigration policy changes. Democrats have got to be willing to support him on at least some of this that they have rhetorically opposed.
Over the last week, Paul Ryan's talking here too, so if we get interrupted, my apologies. But over the last week, you hear about all this mental unfit for the White House, et cetera. You could also argue, Carl, if Democrats were to do a deal with President Trump, they would normalize his presidency. And I think from a political standpoint, you have to answer the question, do they want to do that?
Yeah, well, look, you put your finger on it, because we're so stuck right now. Watch my column on Thursday on this subject, incidentally, Bill, in the Wall Street Journal. But we're so stuck right now on things that don't have to do with the substance of what's necessary to arrive at good policy solutions for the country. We're involved in a political battle that overshadows the policy battle, and as a result, it ill serves the country. But yeah, you're right. One of the issues is Democrats are sitting here saying, we do a deal with this guy and we, quote, make him look successful, and we'd rather have the political issue of DACA and have these people scared that they're going to leave the country than to give him something that is reasonable and necessary for the security of our country.
Yeah, smart to put Secretary Kelly on this, Chief of Staff. Apparently,
oh, yeah, absolutely. He's got a lot of credibility on the issue. Bill, this is only, however, one of two issues. It's the issue we're now looking at, but there's also a big issue underneath on spending, because what the Republicans want to do in the spending bill is increase defense spending, and the Democrats are saying, we will allow you to increase defense spending, but you have to increase it dollar for dollar with increased domestic discretionary spending, and that's going to be problematic, because we got a real problem
with the deficit. And last March, the CBO did a study that said mandatory spending is on a path to grow from 70% of the budget to, including interest payments on the debt, to nearly 80% of the budget over the next 10 years. And the mandatory part of the budget is, by and large, it's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, health care programs, children's health care, it's welfare. It's all the domestic side of the budget, and it will be 3 times the size of the discretionary budget, which is where the military and everything else is.
Wow, that's a big deal. You can show him Paul Ryan, guys. It's okay. He hasn't taken questions yet, Carl, but just want to throw you a bit of a curveball here, okay? You've got all this talk now of Oprah Winfrey. Have you been able to examine perhaps the new state of politics in America? When it was clear the other night, there are a lot of people trying to put pressure on her to at least consider it. How has that changed?
Yeah, well, a lot of people who sat in a hotel ballroom in Hollywood and who are in the same industry that she's in, the entertainment industry. Yeah, maybe politics has fundamentally changed. Maybe from now on, we're only going to run TV celebrities and reality TV stars. Maybe that's the new politics in America, but I don't think so. I think it is a fundamental misreading of what elected Donald Trump. Donald Trump sees the issue of the forgotten American who was being buffeted by the dramatically changing culture and by the dramatically changing economy in America, and was being left out and left behind. And in a reaction to Barack Obama's policies and 8 years of Washington seemed to give it its middle finger to the American people, or a big slice of them. I don't think that's the same thing that's undergirding a Oprah Winfrey bid for the presidency, and I don't think she's going to run.
Wow. Okay. See you in New York real soon. Thank you, Carl. Paul Ryan.
Thank you, buddy.
Budget issues that have been held over until you can figure out an agreement, a bipartisan agreement on immigration?
Well, I don't know if I accept any particular premise, only that we are having bipartisan conversations about all of these issues. We've got CHIP that's expiring. We're having good bipartisan conversations on that. We're having a bipartisan conversation about a cap agreement because there are things we want to address with a cap agreement, like the military, and there are other things like DACA. So we have deadlines. We understand these deadlines, and I think we're having good bipartisan conversations. I won't get into all the details of each one of these things, but there's a lot of work we have to do, and I think all of us, from the House and the Senate, Republicans, Democrats, know that we have to get working on these issues. Yeah.
On the topic of the...
It's her right there. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the deadline next Friday, if you cannot reach a deal on some of these longer-term issues, what's the current support level for a shorter-term?
I'm not going to get into the hypotheticals. I think we're having good, fruitful conversations with our members, and I'll just leave that. When I have more to report, I'll do it.
Last question.
Mr. Speaker, are earmarks making a comeback? And would they help with...
Conversations are having a comeback. No, I think what you're talking about is the Rules Committee hearings. We've encouraged our members all along to talk about budget process reforms. Many of us have opinions on this issue, but I want our members to have conversations. We have members who are very frustrated with the Corps, the Army Corps of Engineers, and how the Army Corps of Engineers has not been up to snuff to getting its job done. And that is among the concerns that the Rules Committee is going to be having conversations about. Thanks, everybody.
So there it was. It was brief, but apparently a question there about immigration, and the House Speaker saying that Republicans are open to negotiations. To what extent, to what degree, on what matters, we do not know yet, but big topic of the White House coming up in 20 minutes.
Well, we know the Democrats want a lot of different things than the Republicans, so it's be interesting to see where they're willing to compromise. By the way, he started off that first GOP news conference of the year touting tax reform.
Yes.
Kind of gotten buried in these first few days, and he started out by talking about all the raises and bonuses that we've seen in the new year as a result of that.
Remember, they promised in February Americans are going to see an increase in their paycheck. So, we're watching that. You're about 4 weeks away, America, so hang on that.
Right. Meanwhile, plus, do you remember this from back in 1999?
Do you have a vice presidential candidate in mind?
Well, I really haven't gotten quite there yet. I guess
it's just
Oprah. I love Oprah. Oprah would always be my first choice. If she'd do it, she'd be fantastic. I mean, she's popular. She's brilliant. She's a wonderful woman.
Pollster and CEO of WPA Intelligence, and Liz Smith, former deputy campaign manager for Martin O'Malley. Thanks to both of you for being here. So, Liz, what do you think? Do Democrats like this idea?
Well, first of all, I don't want to disrespect the Queen, so let me just say that, I think she's a cultural icon, gave a very hopeful, uplifting speech that left a lot of people inspired, not just Democrats. But, I don't think that ultimately Democrats are going to go with someone like Oprah, mostly because, looking at the 2016 election and what's happened since, I think, we don't need a Trump of our own. We don't need a celebrity running our government. And I think that on our side, we understand that, just as we wouldn't expect a chiropractor to be able to perform open heart surgery, we shouldn't expect a celebrity to be able to run a government. And we need to start making governing, great again, and stop putting performance art before, being able to run agencies and do the unglamorous work of running a country.
I hear Chris wanting to jump in and respond to all of that. But first, it's been fascinating to look back at some of the tape between things that Trump has said in the past and Oprah has said in the past. But here is Oprah interviewing Trump way back in 1988, asking him about the possibility. Listen to this.
I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
Probably not. But I do get tired of seeing the country ripped off.
Why would you not?
I just don't think I really have the inclination to do it. I love what I'm doing. I really like it.
Also, it doesn't pay as well.
No, it doesn't. But, I just probably wouldn't do it, Oprah. I probably wouldn't, but I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country. And if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally.
Chris?
I guess it got so bad. I think there's a lot of reasons why a lot of Democrats are looking at Oprah Winfrey. I mean, she would galvanize Hollywood behind Democrats, which is so difficult to do. But in all seriousness, I mean, she's got universal name ID. I mean, compared to other Democrats, Mark McNally notwithstanding, she's incredibly young. I mean, most of them are in their 70s and 80s. Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and others. She's only 63. And she constantly ranks amongst the most admired women in America. But let's face it, I mean, she gave a speech here the other night to a bunch of Hollywood liberals who were half in the bag anyway, that they got all excited about, and took on a scandal that Hollywood created on its own. And this isn't something that lends itself to electing them as president. Having said that, as somebody who competed against Donald Trump in 42 primaries, I can tell you that celebrity does bring with it a certain degree of vote totals behind it. And I would imagine she'd go into any primary situation with about a third of the vote.
And it was really interesting,
really tough to compete against.
Liz, to see the president's daughter, Ivanka, weigh in on Oprah's speech the other night. She tweeted this, quote, "Just saw Oprah's empowering and inspiring speech at last night's #Golden Globes. Let's all come together, women and men, and say #time's up, #united. Liz?
Yeah, well, look, I think it speaks to how divided and toxic the political atmosphere is right now, that both Democrats and Republicans were sort of rallying behind her hopeful message. But let's be clear here. The President of the United States sets the tone, and so, if Ivanka is looking for, inspiration and sort of someone to stand up for women, she should maybe have a conversation with her father first.
All right, Chris, so I'll leave this one with you. Will she or won't she?
I don't think she ultimately does, but the reason is not necessarily because she can't win. I think she just doesn't have. I mean, the reason that Trump was able to win the primary ultimately and then the general election is because he had issues that immigration, building a wall, things like that voters grabbed onto. And a white middle class voter that, if you look at a lot of counties in Pennsylvania and Ohio that Trump won that had voted for Barack Obama that then switched over and voted for Donald Trump. And I just don't think Oprah has that same level of ability to galvanize that sort of swing vote behind her in the way that Trump did.
And Liz, it's always important to see how family and friends respond to the prospect of one possibly running for president. It was very telling the way her longtime partner, Stedman Graham, reacted that night, telling the LA Times it's up to the people. She would absolutely do it, he said.
Well, that's great. And I think it's great that she has a supportive partner. And clearly she got a great response, and she really hit a nerve with the American people. And I think it speaks to the need for a new type of politics going forward, that people are a little sick of all the division, all the negative talk, and maybe looking for someone who's more of a uniter than a divider. And certainly, whether you like Donald Trump or not, he's been very controversial and tried to pit people against each other.
All right, we are going to leave it there. Thanks to both of you for being here this morning.
John Scott's coming up next on Happening Now. We're going to get a preview in a moment here. But first, the annual Consumer Electronics Show kicking off in Las Vegas. And Adam Housley is there live. What's hot, Adam? Good morning.
Oh, Bill, Well, everything. Good morning to you as well. Everything's hot. Everything's Consumer Electronics Show. Last year down year a little bit because of the election. This year, a lot of new stuff. This is pretty cool. This is a Bluetooth connected scooter. It'll go 15 miles an hour, and I'm not going to crash on national television, but you can find stuff like this all across the floor here. Things you'll find in the stores now are coming out soon, and we'll have some cool items for you to check out coming up after the break.
Fox News alert. A NSC spokesman is now telling Fox News that the President Trump, is planning to send a high-level delegation to the Winter Olympics in South Korea next month. According to the spokesperson, President Trump is committed to sending a high-level United States delegation to the Winter Olympics, and looking forward to announcing the delegation soon. Also a comment on North Korea's participation. It's an opportunity for the regime to see the value of ending its international isolation by denuclearizing. That is just breaking that the president is announcing a delegation to the Winter Games soon.
Back here at home, we want to see the future. Go to this event in Las Vegas. Annual Consumer Electronics Show now showing off some robots as the big players came back this year. Adam Housley's one of them. He's there live. What's up, Adam?
I like the fact you call me a big player. I mean, that never happened, so I'm going to tell my wife that. From now on, that's my nickname. What's happening, Bill, last year we know we were here, election year. It seemed like it was kind of a down year. This year, it seems like a lot of the concepts we've seen in recent years are coming to fruition. This is Electron. It's called the Electron wheel. Sorry. Basically, it's a wheel that connects to any bike you have and turns it into an electric bike. So whatever bike you have, Bill, if you don't want to ride anymore, you can be like a little lazy and you want to be able to ride around town, this does it. $7.99. And it connects to an app also. It's pretty cool. I know, Bill, you like to charge things when you're there. This is a purse you can use. It's conductive charging, so you put the phone right on top and it'll charge it, or you can put it inside as well. It'll charge it on the inside. This is $79. It's out right now. A pretty cool purse. Headphones, Bluetooth headphones can be frustrating because when they go dead if you don't charge them when we're flying. This is from Shure. For $149, you can get the bundle where they're the Bluetooth headphones, but also it comes with a cable that connects to it. So if for some reason you don't charge it or you're on a long flight, although they do charge for a long time, you can plug in the cable and still be able to listen to it from Shure. I know you asked me about Google Assistant and Alexa. This is Woohoo. So there's a lot of home assistants now coming out. This is great. It has a speaker on front, Harman Kardon speakers. It was actually, it's been a number of awards for like child monitoring and for adults, for people that are retired and older. It's great for that kind of thing. It has a facial recognition, a voice recognition. So the assistants out here, they're all over. There's all types of them. The first one we saw was 3 years ago here. Now you're seeing companies come out to really compete with the bigger guys, and they have more features. Last thing for you guys. These are $79 and $99, and they're alarm clocks. You wake up to a smell. This is peppermint, Bill, or you can have bacon, or you can have coffee. How cool is that? I mean, we have to get up early in the morning. I want to smell bacon.
Yeah, okay.
Can't eat it, obviously, but it smells pretty good.
Listen, enjoy the show and the robots that are flying around out there, too. Thank you, Adam. Adam Housley there.
I'll tell you all the stuff you can buy. All right, buddy.
Love it. We'll talk to you later in the week. Thank you, Adam.
All right, we're going to take a live look now at L.A. County, where they have gone from battling those massive wildfires to dealing with rain and mudslides now. Obviously, these live pictures just coming into us. Flooding, obviously, a huge problem. Sun Valley in Los Angeles County. We'll be right back.